It was well after midnight when Jessica's phone buzzed with a reminder for the baby monitor check, something she had set up earlier in the evening while babysitting the Harrisons' 2-year-old daughter, Emily. The house lay silent except for the soft hum of the HVAC system and the distant tick of a grandfather clock in the hallway. Jessica flicked on the monitor screen and watched Emily curled beside her beloved stuffed rabbit, asleep and seemingly peaceful, her chest rising and falling gently. She exhaled a sigh of relief and leaned back in the rocking chair in the dim living room, glancing at the large wall clock, 12:17 a.m. She figured she should check on Emily soon in person, but the warmth of the chair and the soothing hush of the house lulled her into a momentary trance. That's when the monitor's screen flickered just for an instant and the image froze. Jessica frowned, picking up the monitor and turning it off and on again. The image returned, but something felt off. The rabbit was no longer beside Emily. Instead, an inky shadow stretched across the mattress. Jessica's pulse quickened. She leaned forward and enlarged the image on the screen. There was definitely something there. Indistinct but sear, moving slowly, as though it were crawling. Her heartbeat hammered in her ears. She stood, clutching the monitor, and hurried down the hallway toward Emily's bedroom, every creak of the floorboards echoing in the silence. When she reached the bedroom door, she hesitated, glancing back at the monitor in her hand. The screen showed Emily still asleep, peacefully, but through the door slightly ajar she could smell something acrid, like burnt plastic. Summoning her courage, she pushed the door open and found Emily sleeping exactly where she'd expected. Stuffed rabbit clasped in her tiny arms, room warm and tidy. On the changing table, the monitor camera she had set up earlier pointed immobile, facing the crib. Jessica exhaled shakily, walking over and unplugging the monitor. She told herself perhaps it was a glitch, or her mind playing tricks in the dark. The house felt alive with possibilities of dread. She placed the monitor base in the living room and returned to her chair, trying to calm her racing mind. But the hush of the house pressed in on her, and she found it impossible to relax. At 12:45 a.m., the monitor buzzed again with a faint alert. Jessica's eyes shot open, and she stared at the screen. Nothing in the crib. Emily had vanished. The stuffed rabbit lay abandoned at the foot of the crib, and the shadow from earlier now slithered slowly across the mattress toward the open crib rail as if to embrace the rabbit. Jessica's blood ran cold. She bolted from the living room toward the bedroom. But as she reached the door, she heard a faint, muffled whimper from inside. She pushed open the door fully and flicked on the light only to find Emily standing in the corner of the room, facing the wall, rocking gently as though lulled by an unseen lullaby. The rabbit trailed limply at her feet. Jess hissed for Emily to turn around. The little girl turned slowly but not toward Jessica. Instead, Emily's head tilted upward at an unnatural angle, her eyes black voids. Jessica screamed and stumbled back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. And the instant the light flickered, the black voids snapped back into normal green-blue childlike eyes, and Emily whispered, "It wanted to play." Jessica lunged for Emily, scooping her up and racing out of the room, but as she reached the living room, the monitor on the table sprang to life again by itself. The screen showing a view of the hallway. Someone or something stood at the far end, just at the threshold of the stairs, its body elongated and unknown arms akimbo glowing faintly with a sickly pale light. Jessica's skin crawled. She held Emily tightly and backed into the kitchen, grabbing a heavy Castian skillet from the stove. Behind her she heard the soft tread of footsteps wet and dragging across the hardwood floor. The entity advanced 3 slow steps into the living room, then paused, then took 3 more. Jessica raised the skillet and screamed at the creature to show itself. It responded not with a face, but with a sound, a chorus of voices, little giggles, children singing, whispering stay and play, mingling with the clink of chains, and a dragging scrape. The temperature plunged. Jessica gasped and dropped the skillet, shielding Emily with her body. And the creature lunged but vanished into a gust of wind, and the monitor's screen flickered off. In the darkness, Jessica could only hear her own breath and Emily's trembling. Then came a tap-tap-tap on the window. She turned on the glass. She saw the silhouette of the entity, pressing its long fingers against the window from the outside. Panic overcame her. She darted for the front door locked. Her phone had no signal. The entity hammered on the window. The glass rattled, and the baby monitor in the living room flickered on again, showing the view of the crib empty, the rabbit missing. Jessica sprinted to the door, yanked at the deadbolt, finally threw it open and ran down the porch steps into the pitch-black yard, holding Emily close. The creature followed its shape, gliding across the lawn, silent but for the scraping of the wood chips under its feet. Jessica ran toward the street, and in the dark she tripped and fell. Emily cried out. As Jessica scrambled to stand, she turned back. There it stood at the edge of the yard, its body half hidden in shadow, yet its eyes two small pinpricks of white. Then it smiled, a wide unnatural grin, and raised a hand to wave. Jessica screamed, grabbed Emily, and ran until she reached her car and fumbled for the keys. She drove off, the entity's silhouette shrinking in the rearview mirror until it vanished when she reached the main road. Breathless, she drove away and eventually reached safety at the nearest gas station. She called the Harrisons. There was no answer. The next morning, police found the house silent, the crib empty, the infant monitor lying unplugged on the floor, and the rabbit perched upright on the mattress with a single muddy footprint beside it. The Harrisons returned home hours later, bewildered, to find Emily asleep in her crib as though she had never left. Jessica, haunted by the memory, left the babysitting job and never returned, but each night when she lay in bed, she heard the faint whisper of children singing stay and play, and the image on a monitor she no longer owned flickering in her mind, and she knew that somewhere, in the shadowed corners of the house, the camera was still recording.